Almost 5 years ago, Ralph Seppi Jr. unveiled his highly anticipated feature film, Lover. This project had been generating a lot of buzz for over 3 years prior to its release. When the film came out, I shared my thoughts on the film through my previous YouTube channel, and my thoughts on the film were lukewarm at best. A few months later, I followed up with another video where I praised certain aspects of the film while also debunking criticisms from a known Ralph Seppi detractor. However, I have come to realize something that my 18-year-old self would never have admitted. This movie sucks. It sucks so fucking bad. So what exactly makes this film so fundamentally broken? To comprehend the issue at hand, we need to rewind back to 2015. Back then, Seppi was riding high on the success of his 2 short films, The High and King Candy, both of which received a somewhat positive reception. In retrospect though, these films were pretty awful, but for a high school film student, they were far and away above average. Hell, I would even say that these are above average for a typical YouTube short film. However, the positive feedback Seppi garnered fueled his ambitions. He believed that if he could produce 2 short films on a shoestring budget, that he could undertake the daunting task of creating a full-length feature film with a decently sized budget. Thus, Lover was born. Now, it's crucial that we still approach this film with the understanding that this is not a multi-million-dollar production. It is rather the brainchild of an 18-year-old filled with ambition and executed on a relatively modest budget. However, at the same time, with everything Ralph has criticized other people of doing, while also hyping up this project a lot, we should still see this through a very critical lens. The movie is divided into 4 seasons, and thus I thought it would be good to analyze it on a seasonal basis, starting with... The opening scene of this film is probably one of the most poorly executed scenes I have ever come across. It revolves around Ralph's character Howard picking up a girl named Delilah as they both make their way to a club. Now, in Ralph's Kickstarter campaign, he mentioned that these 2 characters were supposed to meet at a bar.
They meet at a bar and they form a bond, and over the course of that night they learn more about each other and the audience learns more about them.
You lie!
But in the final feature, we are subjected to this abysmal scene instead.
Are you headed to the DL?
The what?
The DL, it's like a club?
Yeah.
Great, well I'm headed there too, so do you need a ride there?
And if we consider the duration of Howard's drive, it becomes crystal clear that Delilah would have had to walk for at least a mile or 2 to reach the bar. It honestly leaves me wondering, why on earth would Delilah even consider getting into a car with him? Sure, she expresses some hesitation, but ultimately, she goes along with it.
How did you recognize me?
You always wear the same thing. Not to sound like a creep, like I know what clothes you wear every time. You just look familiar.
Sounds pretty creepy.
Yeah, don't worry, you're safe with me.
This decision defies all logic even in a movie world, and is only there for us to get our characters from point A to point B. Now another thing that's a huge elephant in the room with this movie, and that is Ralph's awful use of black and white. Initially, Ralph had intended to differentiate the movie not only through its seasonal divisions, but also by incorporating a distinct color scheme for each season. The original trailer featured a few shots that we encounter in the final feature, albeit in color. While the colors themselves appeared somewhat weird and in some cases really bad, it was evident that they were captured with the intention of being color graded in such a manner. However, many of these shots, particularly the ones that were outside the winter season, were never intended to be presented in black and white. I understand Ralph deciding against this concept because it is an overall distracting thing to have the color palette constantly change over and over again, and it just comes off as something a college film student would think is so cool. However, once the footage is shot with a particular color palette in mind, you are somewhat locked into that approach, especially when it comes to black and white. There are so many shots in this movie where you have to crank the brightness all the way up in order to understand what the hell is going on. Now let's dive back into the dialogue that takes place in the car, and it's a struggle to endure.
Tell me a little about yourself.
What do you want to know?
Your name. Would be nice to know.
Right. My name's Delilah.
Oh, my name's Howard.
Oh, my dog's name was Howard.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. What breed was he?
He's a Caucasian Shepherd.
Oh, that's cool. You got any pictures of him?
No, not on me. I have some in the house, but he died a really long time ago.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring it up.
No, that's fine. It was.
Bring back old,
It's
like,
okay.
bad memories.
No, it was years ago.
It feels as if Ralph and her were just improvising their entire conversation without any real direction. It could work if the actors had any form of chemistry, but unfortunately they don't. I understand that Ralph's character is supposed to be portrayed as a creep, but even creeps in movies have some level of charm or depth to their character. The actress who plays Delilah doesn't fare much better when it comes to chemistry or just her being memorable, and it's evident that this actress portraying her is really struggling because there's not a lot to work with. In all fairness, she was probably an up-and-coming talent working with an 18-year-old director who's also playing a lead role in this film. It is likely that she didn't receive the best direction, so we can't entirely blame her for her lackluster performance. So they finally arrive at the club, and for a club that's supposedly very active, it sure is very quiet. I mean, fuck, just add some dubstep or techno music being played faintly in the background. It honestly feels that they're simply parked on a curb in a quiet suburban neighborhood rather than in a parking lot of a club. And of course, that's exactly what's happening. The entire car ride scene consists of Ralph aimlessly driving around a series of blocks in a suburban neighborhood.
Brilliant but lazy.
So once arriving, Howard decides that he doesn't want to go to the club. Despite Delilah visibly walking towards a club that is likely a mile or two away, she inexplicably agrees to go back with him to his apartment. Look, I understand the need to move the characters from point A to point B, but once again, why not have this scene take place at a club or a bar?
They meet at a bar and they form a bond.
Even if budget constraints were a factor, they could have depicted a shabby bar with a small number of people, perhaps even filling it in with his own friends. It feels like Howard engaging in a conversation with Delilah at a bar would have flowed much more naturally than what's presented here.
I don't want to go to the club.
Why'd you want to go in the first place?
I was going there to meet some friends.
Same.
I never see you there with friends.
I never see you there with friends.
So once Howard takes Delilah to his house, he attempts to roofie her by dropping the entire pill into her wine glass. Now, let me be clear. I'm not claiming to possess knowledge about how to date rape someone, but that's simply not how it's done. However, just as Howard is about to offer her the drugged wine, he overhears her having problems with someone on the phone. This prompts Howard to have a change of heart and decides not to date rape her. So, here's how I would redo this entire scene. Again, have it take place at a bar like you said their initial meeting would happen. Hell, I'd even say have everything here take place at the bar. If it's a rundown bar they'd be at, no one would notice him slipping something into her drink. The way I see it, despite Howard being a total creep, he does have somewhat of a heart. Unfortunately, we don't get that, so we're stuck here in the apartment. And I must say, Ralph's dubbing in this film is on a similar level as Tommy Wiseau's.
I'm tired, I'm wasted, I love you, darling.
Not liquor, but it's the best I've got.
Ralph's been known for poorly dubbing his lines, and this issue persists throughout this, and especially his follow-up film, Golden Hour.
You want to come over? Yeah, you can come over. You can bring this guy
Right now?
with you.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Can I hop in your car?
It's strange because I never noticed any problems with the dubbing in The Higher King Candy. While there are a few lines dubbed in King Candy, I felt they were at least executed much better.
About the charity? Is it a scam?
Who told you this?
I can't tell you.
Was it someone in the club?
Still can't tell you.
However, in Lover, it feels like Ralph reached that point in post-production when he either didn't care or assumed the audience wouldn't notice because Howard's character was in the background of the shot. It leaves me wondering whether Ralph simply didn't give a damn if the audio recorded on set was done right, making it impossible for him to understand exactly what he was saying. To be fair, I faced a similar problem back in high school when I made a film and the audio sounded just like this. I had to resort to terrible dubbing because I couldn't make out any of the original dialogue.
My house, and
Thought I was having a good night, but I guess this happened. However, my film was made with no budget. While Ralph had a budget of over $10,000, you would think that he had at least one decent sounding mic on set. Another thing that is just so beyond stupid in this movie is that Ralph makes Howard plug his ears to somehow enhance his hearing. It's the most baffling shit I've ever seen in this movie. I failed to comprehend how this action would improve someone's hearing, especially when Delilah is literally screaming at the person on the phone just one room over. He doesn't need to do this. So finally, we're done with that horrible opening scene, and while this film is really bad, I think that this opening scene is probably the worst part of this movie. Moving on to the following day, we find out that Delilah's real name is actually Christina. I honestly find this reveal rather pointless and unnecessary. However, Ralph had previously teased that the film would explore the unveiling of dark secrets. Perhaps he felt that the revealing of her real name could be misconstrued as a hint that she's untrustworthy, but it honestly feels like something very insignificant overall. I mean, that fucking car ride was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever seen. I think any person in that scenario would give a fake name. We are then introduced to Christina's roommates, who are presented as the supposed antagonists of this film. They're depicted as a group of drug dealers because Ralph has a streak of having drug dealers in his movies. However, the drug dealers are portrayed by his high school friends, and they are abysmal. Especially the guy who plays Kyle, who's supposed to be Christina's boyfriend. Ralph expressed a desire to cast someone older for the role of Kyle, a decision that could have added some depth and vulnerability to Christina's predicament. Unfortunately, he cast his friend, who's probably 19 years old, and isn't intimidating in the slightest. I mean, just look at the way he's sitting. Does this scream intimidating to you? They're also living in a house that clearly doesn't belong to a bunch of teenagers, let alone a bunch of supposed drug dealers. The kitchen in this house resembles the same thing you might see at a grandmother's house. If you wanted to make it more believable, they should have been in a place that's a bit more run down and janky, not somewhere that's so tidy and clean. There's also this really long shot of them eating, which puts the pacing of the film at a slow halt.
I'm here. Hey, there you go. What's up?
What's good?
You want butter? No, you get cream cheese? In there.
You'd have to get like 2 would have been fine.
Ralph knew by making the movie with a film noir style, he had to make the film slow and boring because, of course, all film noirs are slow and boring. He also needed to fill that feature-length film quota by making it 80 minutes long. In fact, the film's length is exactly 80 minutes long. Christina decides to call Howard, and we hear that her voice has a phone call filter sound effect, despite us seeing her face.
Hey.
Hey. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Seems that Ralph wanted to inject some of his film student artistic flair into the scene by using that voice filter effect. However, it feels like it's a cover-up for poor audio recorded in the bathroom, especially because his voice is clean when we see his face.
Yeah, sure.
So during their call, Christina invites Howard out to hang, and instead of being treated to a delightful scene where their connection deepens through witty and charming dialogue, we are subjected to a mere montage of them engaging in cutesy activities.
How romantic!
Interestingly, there is a deleted scene that showcases them engaging in a conversation. Based on the fact that Ralph cannot write witty or charming dialogue with these characters and that they have no chemistry whatsoever, my guess is that this scene was also going to be inserted into this montage or another montage. It's also worth noting that Ralph himself has critiqued this type of screenwriting in his Lifetime Specials review, where he highlighted the tendency for characters to show off how eccentric or funny they are without truly developing them with meaningful dialogue.
And then they have those scenes, those scenes where they have to show one of the cast members being very, eccentric and likable and funny, but the writers don't have the talent to write a character that's eccentric or likable or funny. So they have them like act out a bunch of nonsense as music plays and everyone's just laughing.
The same criticism can be applied here, as Ralph fails to provide the characters with genuinely cute and engaging dialogue. While I understand the film is not primarily focused on being a romance, it was marketed as partly a romantic movie. We expect the initial stages of their relationship to have some level of charm and warmth, setting the stage for the ensuing chaos and turmoil in the third act. The lack of character development, or hell, character traits, leaves us feeling indifferent towards their relationship and their eventual downward spiral. Also, is that the camera operator's arm? Like... Christina and Kyle have a conversation during dinner, and we're supposed to feel like Christina is in danger and one word wrong would set Kyle off. However, once again, when this dude is your antagonist, you feel absolutely nothing in this scene aside from laughter that Ralph thought this dude of all people was an intimidating threat. It's weird that out of the 3 friends he had at his disposal to dump this role onto, he chose the dude who is the least bit frightening. It's like he went on wheeldecide.com and put all of his friends on the wheel and spun it. Every scene with these two makes me feel like these are 2 teenagers having a conversation, not one teenager in a bad predicament because the guy she's with is involved in crime and is an emotionally and physically abusive person. So Howard and Christina are out and about, and it becomes apparent why Ralph chose to present their first day together as a montage rather than having them talk, because when we do hear them engage in conversation...
What's that over there?
That?
Yeah.
It's a boat. Oh my god. Your stupidity never ceases to amaze me.
You're not even looking where I'm looking.
I thought you were pointing at the boat.
Oh, I can't bear to watch.
It would have been great to understand why Ralph thinks she's stupid, but that was probably spoken about in this shot. He then kisses her, and for the first time, Ralph actually did something right. He made it as awkward as possible, and that's what this scene is supposed to be. The way I saw this film is that it's about a psychopathic stalker who finally meets a girl that he genuinely has feelings for, but he's so beyond socially awkward that his conversations are completely emotionless. So when he does kiss her, it should feel really awkward. I wish I would have felt the awkwardness because of that, and not because the movie has been so beyond fucking cringe.
Yeah, don't worry, you're safe with me.
He executed everything right here, but because the first 25 minutes of the movie were so unbelievably awful, I can't say it's very effective. After that transpires, the drug dealers follow Howard and beat the living shit out of him. It's a scene that comes out of complete nowhere and feels like it was thrown in at the last second. That's because it is. In the commentary on the Blu-ray, they discussed how this scene was thrown in at the last second because the film needed to have more tension. However, when you cast these buffoons as your antagonists, the scene loses all the tension. I mean, just look at that menacing face. So winter is probably the best part of the movie. It's probably because at least the color grading here makes sense because it was intended to be in black and white. It also seems like it's the section of the movie that feels the least bit tampered with and feels like it was Ralph's initial vision. Now, don't get me wrong, it isn't good at all, but it's like a piece of shit with a couple of sprinkles. It starts with Howard getting a phone call from Christina where she said she had a huge fight with her boyfriend, and Howard even has a conversation with him over the phone. He is also filled with what you could potentially call incel rage, and it's kind of funny. It's funny to see this insanely creepy dude who deep down knows he could be a good man, but keeps getting friend-zoned by the same chick over and over and over again. You might also find it weird that the boyfriend who previously just beat the shit out of Howard would be calling him. Well, that's because this scene right here was originally going to be a completely different scene in which Howard was going to have dinner with the drug dealers, and we may have actually seen some character traits with Howard, but instead, Ralph went the complete serious route and decided to have Howard get the shit beaten out of him. Also, Ralph tends to just overuse clips of his cat in order to pad the runtime out. I mean, this cat appears randomly, over and over again. I guess adding slow, boring shots of nothing of substance makes your film much deeper. Instead of developing these characters, let's just add more cat shots. It'll drive home the fact that this film is smarter than it actually is. After that, Christina meets a dude named Raymond in her class. A shocking thing is that they are waiting until the end of the semester to interact with each other. it probably only happened like this because Ralph waited until winter to cast the guy who plays Raymond, and Ralph decided to shoot this entire movie in order.
Raymond, this is Howard,
Her chauffeur.
he's my friend.
Hi, I'm Raymond.
Glad to see Christina's finally making friends.
Well, I figured it was about time.
Well, it was nice meeting you.
God, I would just love to know what they're saying, but the sound of cars in the background was just so much more important.
Hi, I'm Raymond.
Bro, did Ralph even try with this dubbing? I mean, what the fuck was that?
That was the most awkward conversation I've ever had.
Raymond seems okay.
Did they just walk in total silence for hours until it was nighttime to finish their conversation?
You're a little weird.
Yeah, that's true.
Jesus, just have Howard laugh or just cut the scene. Why do you need to add that if he's clearly not saying it?
You seem different.
How?
I don't know, just different.
Instead of showing a gradual change with Christina's character, Ralph instead has Howard say that she's changed, so we the audience knows that she changed. Christina then gets invited to Raymond's party, and to be fair to Ralph and everyone involved in the production, this is the only scene in the movie that I actually like quite a bit. Hearing Raymond and Christina interact is kind of funny. They aren't good actors by any stretch of the imagination, but you can tell they're at least having a lot of fun.
What, you tired out? You don't want any more?
Me? Tired out?
Yeah. You're lightweight.
Excuse me?
You heard me.
We also get to see Howard getting overly paranoid while he's stoned, which is really funny. So yes, Ralph did something genuinely good once again. This is all thrown away with the next scene, which is literally just a montage of the drug dealers selling drugs, and it's shot in the most film student way possible. Also, I've never seen a drug dealer sell cocaine in broad daylight on a park bench. This scene doesn't feel necessary except to pad the runtime and make this movie more serious. Film 101, everybody. If your movie has drugs involved, it's a serious and deep movie. Then Christina out of nowhere has a drug overdose. To show that she's having a drug overdose, we have Ralph stick his lens into a paper towel roll and zoom out. This movie is just a weird blend of slow as fuck pace, and then things happening at rapid speed that it gets difficult to comment on what's going on. We then go from one extreme to the other when Howard picks up a prostitute and he fucking kills her.
Crazy shit costs extra.
Okay. That was brilliant. It's so beyond stupid that I find so much enjoyment seeing that. What's kind of funny is Ralph used this scene in his Smosh the Movie review to show how he spent the money better than Smosh did, and how his movie looks more professional.
I'm currently making a movie right now with $10,000. And I'm not saying it's better or worse, because I don't know yet, it's not done. But at least it looks like a movie with money behind it.
You could say that the Smosh movie with its bigger budget is a bigger disappointment, but I think with how much Ralph hyped this movie up and him preaching he knows certain fundamentals to making a good movie, I think this is definitely the bigger disappointment.
And I know I can get through it and make a good movie.
You lie!
So Christina blocks Howard, and Howard thinks that Christina might be in harm, so he goes and kills all the drug dealers. He also does that stupid ear-plugging thing so we can hear them clearer before he shoots them, which, once again, makes absolutely no sense and is just a way for Howard to have his own weird quirk. He also does what he complained that Doug Walker used to do in his movies like To Boldly Flee.
This is another Doug Walker staple. Instead of putting work into the visual effects, he just keeps using these frames of white. Instead of putting work into the visual effects, he just keeps using these frames of white.
Only positive thing I can say about this is that these lackluster characters are finally dead and I don't have to deal with their fucking horrible acting anymore. After all that shit, Christina calls him and says that she's back from rehab and apologizes to being a horrible person to Howard.
I'm calling because I'm in rehab right now for drugs, and I'm doing this thing where I have to talk to people who I've hurt in the past and apologize. You're one of them. So, I'm sorry for the way I treated you at times, and I'm sorry for ignoring you. Pretty shitty.
I don't understand why she thinks she's a horrible person to Howard, but then again, I know nothing about this character at all. She's a boring fucking character, and the only thing that she has in her character trait file is that she friend zones our lead and gives him a fake name. So to add insult to injury to our boy Howard, he sees that Raymond and Christina are in a relationship. Because of this, Howard decides to scout out Raymond's house in pitch fucking black. It's here where you begin to really wish that this film was in color. I have the Blu-ray, luckily. Well, I wouldn't say luckily, but at least I'm able to see it. But when I watched this movie on Vimeo, I had to crank the brightness all the way up to understand what the fuck was going on. Howard then strangles Christina at her house and places her body underneath Raymond's house. That scream is Ralph. It's not the girl who plays Christina, it's Ralph. We then cut to a hospital room which looks an awful lot like a hotel room, and it's clear that the person Howard is with is Christina. It's funny how people did not understand the ending or who that was. I thought it was pretty fucking obvious. The ending kind of reminds me of the Alexander Payne short film, The Passion of Martin, where despite almost killing the love interest, he's there with her in the hospital to manipulate her into thinking that no matter what, he'll always be there. To Ralph's credit, the fact that I'm comparing him to a director like Alexander Payne is a big fucking stretch. Also, his short film is 15 times better than this pile of shit. He also has to smoke a cigarette after committing this crime because the shot of a main character smoking a cigarette is super artsy. He does this despite the fact that he's wearing gloves to hide his DNA, but he is smoking, which basically defeats the purpose of all this. But finally, after 80 minutes of that thrill ride, to sum up my opinion on Lover,
we have been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok.
If we look at the Kickstarter and read what Ralph said he was planning for the film, and then we watch the film itself, you could see that a lot of things have changed over the years. I can't completely fault Ralph, as production of the film began when he was 18 years old and ended when he was about 21. A lot of people grow up during that time frame, and by the end of it, he probably saw the film completely different and tried to make something new with what he had. It also seems like 2 police officers were planned for the film, but were cut. It's unknown if these were shot or if they were cut. I do, however, remember on the original Lover Twitter showing the script of a scene where Howard interacts with a cop, but sadly the Twitter page for Lover was taken down a few years back. From what I remembered, Howard was being interrogated and his responses felt very Tarantino wannabe-like, where he just listed off amendments to sound smarter than the cops. There was also a snippet of an exchange between Christina and Kyle, but it was also cut for unknown reasons. From what I remember, the line that Christina said after Kyle apologized was that she wishes he would fucking change in everything he did to her. It made Christina sound whinier than fucking Anakin Skywalker. It also seems like it was cut because Ralph wouldn't have been able to get an emotional performance like that from his lead actress. In the original trailer from 2016, not only was the film in color, but it also had so many deleted scenes that probably would have told an entirely different movie. I never got the film noir vibe from it, and it seems like it was a last-minute decision on Ralph's part because the new cut he made was much slower. Unfortunately for Ralph, even though film noirs are much slower, they do have substance, while this movie has about as much substance as my left nut. I mean, just compare the 2 trailers. They're entirely different movies.
It doesn't matter who you are or what you've done. In the end, it'll make everything work out.
I'm calling because I have to talk to people who I've hurt in the past and apologize. You're one of them. I'm sorry for the way I treated you at times, and I'm sorry for ignoring you.
I was hoping when buying the $20 Blu-ray, I would have gotten to see some of these deleted scenes, but unfortunately, I didn't. The Blu-ray is just the movie, a commentary where Ralph and 2 of the drug dealers barely pay attention to the film, and the film's trailer. Hell, I didn't even get the picture of Ralph that I was promised. With how little people cared for the movie by the time it came out, the chances of us seeing the original film is pretty low. After the movie, Ralph had kind of fallen out of grace as a prominent YouTuber. He originally planned for his Justice League review to be his last in the Ralph the Movie Maker style of reviews and would move on to bigger and better things, but still checking in with shorter reviews. He decided against that and released some quality videos like his Gotti review. Now his reviews consist of him talking in the most monotone voice I have ever heard.
Hello and welcome to Ralph the Movie Maker. This movie is titled The Top the Fourth Wall the Movie.
You can sound monotone and be funny. Just look at Mr. Plinkett, or hell, earlier videos from Ralph.
Thomas and the Magic Railroad. Wait, what the fuck? Who requested this? I guess I have to do it.
But here, it just sounds like he doesn't care and wants to quit so badly.
The Snowman is a film that was released in 2017.
The Snowman. Sometimes he puts effort into his videos like his Charlie's Angel review, but they have become so few and far between that you may get a quality video from him once a year, while at the same time having him delete 1 or 2 videos from his past. I won't get into his controversial Joker review because it's been talked about to death. People tend to say that was his downfall, but to me, I think it's just the quality of his videos suffering and never returning to how they used to be. Having one bad review doesn't kill a career. Just look at Doug Walker. He had a review worse than Ralph's, and the man is still cranking out content that people enjoy. Despite me tearing apart this horrific movie from Ralph, I don't hate the man. He is a huge part of 2016 and 2017 YouTube during some of the craziest times in the world, and he'll always have my respect for entertaining me for so many years. I still often go back to his old reviews and enjoy myself quite a bit. It's sad some of my favorites he had on his channel are deleted, but thanks to numerous re-uploads, his content will never die. Anyways, I'll catch you all in the next video, whenever that is.